Welcome to another FITA Museum unboxing. I'm Leigh Wishner, the museum's Registrar and Coordinator, and today I'm going to introduce you to a legend of 20th century textile design. But before I make that introduction, I thought you'd like to see how we store some of our longer textile lengths in the museum. Each textile is carefully rolled on an acid-free tube, wrapped in tissue, tied with twill tape, and slotted into a little base to keep it from moving around in the box. As often as possible, we try to have reference photos affixed to our tags so that we can know at a glance what's on the roll before we go to the trouble of unwrapping it. And I will note for this session, I'll be handling with clean hands but no gloves. I'm finally ready to introduce you to today's star, Jack Lenor Larsen, who was primarily known as a weaver, started his own business in the 50s, but is also renowned for his printed textiles. And when I say he was renowned for his printed textiles, what I really mean to say is that his design studio was renowned for these prints. He had a whole roster of talented designers working for him, and he liked to give them credit. This is Primavera, inspired by the paintings of Gustav Klimt, and it took Larson and the freelance artist Don White more than a year to perfect this. And who is Don White? He was a classically trained New York City artist and fabric designer who lived and worked in Greenwich Village, but also in the Netherlands and Paris. His works for Larson Studios and other companies are found in countless museum collections. It's White's name that appears most often on the selvage of Jack Lenor Larsen textiles, and Larson himself thought of White as a Van Gogh for the studio because of his sense of color and his designs. Primavera was introduced as part of Larson's Palette 61 collection. It is a 7-color print, as you can see indicated by the registration marks here, and it came in a ton of exotic colorways. Ours is a beautiful muted olive and blue colorway, but if you don't believe me that it came in bright exotic colors, how about this couch? And tip, have a lot of fun Googling Jack Lenor Larsen couch. Adding to the uber sumptuous look of the fabric is the feel of the fabric. It's actually a cotton velvet, otherwise known as velveteen, and you can see it's very low pile. Primavera represents a milestone in the company's history because Larson's studio was the first in the American textile industry to successfully print onto a cotton velvet with no loss of color intensity. And this behemoth design is called Conquistador, also designed by White and introduced in 1967 as part of the company's Andean collection. It became one of their signature fabrics, just like Primavera. Larson was a world traveler and said that this design was inspired by something he'd seen on a trip to Cusco, Peru. In his words, it was his concept of how an Inca might handle a Baroque motif, that is, flat. It's also a cotton velveteen, and if it looks like batik, well, that's because it is. The fabric was printed with a specially formulated wax mixture combining beeswax and paraffin that's allowed to cool and crack. The fabric was dyed once with a wax-resistant tact, and again once the wax had been removed, in closely related colors to give sort of a tortoiseshell crackle effect. And it was a top secret process to their studio. This may be the wild honey or tortoise colorway, I'm not entirely sure. And it's really hard for me to give you a sense of scale because I can't unroll it all the way. So I found this wonderful photo to give you a sense of the Baroque motif in its fullest. And here's one last Jack Lenor Larsen Studios textile I'm going to show you today. It's called Nazca, and it's from 1966. Again, another sumptuously printed velveteen. You might be familiar with the word Nazca because of the Nazca lines, the monumental earthworks in Peru. But this textile refers very specifically to a type of feathered textile. It was also made in Peru. You can see the feathers with little tiny brush strokes that are lurking within these lines overall, giving it a really nice feathery textured feel. And let me sing the praises of samples. In the industry, this would have been called a memo, which means it's a sample of fabric that's sent out on approval to a decorator, interior designer, to see if it will work for their clients. Memos are usually less than a full selvage width and often have serged edges to prevent somebody from taking it and making it into something saleable. But what I love about samples is they give you such a wealth of information. Without this associated tag, we may have had to do a lot more research to find out more about this fabric, but now we know the name, the number, the color, the width, the materials, and how long it would take for you to order it, and the designer. And lest you think Jack Lenor Larsen's only claim to fame is upholstery fabric, I wanted you to know that he did design for apparel as well, making stretchy fabrics, but he also used his regular interior furnishing fabrics for some fashions. I love how these sumptuous textiles and American Fabrics magazines in our collection allowed me to fuse the stories of interior and apparel textile design together. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you next time.